Okay, I am Melissa and I work at Therapy Playground, and I am going to show you how to bill a secondary claim at NC Tracks. The first thing you need to do is sign into NC Tracks. Once you're in, you're going to go to Create a Professional Claim. You're going to click on your own company for your group and your NPI. You're going to tell it which office. Most of us only have one, but we're going to put that in. And then you're going to enter your recipient's ID. In here, in your dates of service, you can put a range of dates. If I'm only doing one date, then that's the date that I put in. You can tab between these fields or click on them. I do a lot of tabbing because I can count and I know which tabs I should, how many times I need to tab. You will notice that it has your patient information across the top, so you know you're doing the right person. We have a red asterisk, so we need to go ahead and fill this in. I have everything written down to make this go quicker. Billing a secondary shouldn't take much more than, say, 2 minutes, maybe 3, if you have the information, or you can copy and paste from your computer system. And of course, I put NC in the wrong spot. At this point, going from tab to tab, you can either click on the next tab or you can tell it next. I typically use whichever is showing. If the next shows, I go there. If I don't have to scroll down and just click on the next tab, I do that as well. You're going to key in anything with the red star. You can tab over or click on it. When you get to claim frequency type, it's always, whether it's a primary or a secondary, the number 1. Admit, discharge. It's 1 day, it's 1 session. That's what works in that block regardless. Your provider signature on file is always filled in for you already. Assignment of benefits is always a yes. Release of information, it's up to you whether it's signed or informed, but ours are always signed. Providers accepting the assignment, yes, it is assigned. And the place of service. Typically office or the home, whichever one you are treating in is where that'll go. At this point, all of these below at the bottom of this page are already filled in with no's. I always skip this. There's nothing on this that we need to fill out. So I automatically go to provider information. The first part is billing provider. The billing provider is our company, not a person. So initially, I'm telling it on this part for the billing provider to be the non-person. Our company's already in there because we started out that way. If not, and you have others loaded in there that you need to change that to, then you can change it, but something has to be in there. The address of the company is already in there, and the taxonomy is already in there, because those are associated with that NPI. Pull your page down. The rendering provider is the same as the billing provider. It is not. Your rendering provider is the one who performed the service. So you're going to tell it no, and it will open up the screen so you can tell NC Tracks who provided that service. So this time it is a person, and if you have a favorite list that you've already loaded, which we have, I can select the therapist that provided that service. If not, and you just have a list of MPIs, then you key that in instead. You tell it which office, and you tell it that it was a speech pathologist. If they were a provider prior to NC Tracks and were automatically loaded into NC Tracks, they have an audiologist on there. And you can't really take it out, so you just click on a speech therapist. Would you like to add a rendering provider? Yes, I would, because NC Tracks needs, or a referring provider. NC Tracks needs to know who the Carolina Access doctor was that referred the child over. And this I also have written down so that I can save time. So I know the doctor's office, nothing needs to go in the first name. I always put the clinic. It doesn't really matter what words go in there. The most important thing is this NPI, making sure that is correct. We don't want to change anything about a service facility location, so we're just going to tell it. Let me confirm this is correct. And I'm going to tell it to go to next because I'm done with that. The other payers tab when you're talking about secondary is the most important tab. Would you like to add another all other payers? Yes, I would. Fill in everything that it asks you for. In this case, this was a TRICARE primary. The date they paid was 03/09/2015. You'll find all this information on your EOBs. And how much did they pay? They paid $56.13. You're going to tell it to add, and it'll open up an editing row. Kind of has you elaborate on the information that you already put in. If in fact the other insurance paid $0, you would have entered it in that spot right there before you hit add. Other payer primary ID, doesn't really matter what goes in there, but what works best is if you just put the other insurance number, the same as you're going to put in other insured identifier. It's already got the date paid because you entered it up there, and it already has the paid amount because you entered it up there. So you can go ahead and click on the next. This would be the parent, or your who the primary insurance is under. It doesn't need a first name. I usually put it in, but you only have to put in the last name. And then again, other insurance identifier and other payer primary ID, both the same number. You can copy and paste. You can do however you want. It works either way. Especially if your fingers type the right number. Let's just put it in again. And the payer sequence, this is the payer you're talking about that you're entering right now, so it would be your primary payer. Pull your page down a little bit. Would you like to add an address? No. It already has a no. There's no need to do that. Relationship, this was a child of the insured, and your claim filing indicator. In this one, if it's Blue Cross Blue Shield, you can click on that. If it's United Healthcare or Cigna or any of those, you may want to use the commercial insurance click. This happens to be TRICARE, and so I always tell it for TRICARE that it's an other federal program, because TRICARE is not on here, so I just put other federal program. For the assignment of benefits, you're going to tell it yes, and for the release of information, whether you have it informed or signed, either one you click, I'm sure works fine. We always put signed. And then the important line on this page is, would you like to add claim level adjustments? Yes. It'll open up a small field and you're going to fill it in. Adjustment group code. This is, why is there adjustment? Was it a contract obligation? Is it parent-patient responsibility? I use two, either the contract obligation, because either we and or the family have a contract with this insurance, and so this is why they've only paid the amount that they did. So the patient either owes or it's a contract obligation. Per NC Tracks, when I had to call back in the beginning, they said use contract obligation because this is an insurance that we and the parent have a contract with, but patient responsibility would work as well. Under your adjustment reason code, there are many. Typically, you're going to use 1, 2, or 3 because it's a deductible amount, a coinsurance amount, or a copay amount. Another one that we use quite often may be 50, and these are non-covered services because it's not deemed medical necessity by the payer. And we'll get that a lot as well with some of your commercial insurances. What we're doing right now, that happens to be a copay, so I'm going to click on that one. And your adjustment amount, always put in the amount of the original claim. If you're telling it just the adjustable amount is how much is still owed, you will not get your full amount. So always put in the amount of the original claim. If by chance you're billing 3 for this same person at the same time, and it was, say, 3 therapy sessions, of course your dates are adjusted, but in this point you would put $300. You're going to put the full amount of the claim. You're going to tell it to add. And then, unless there was another payer, and this is a tertiary claim, you then just tell it to save the other payer. You're going to go on to your service. This is no different now at this point than if you were putting it in as primary. You're going to put in your speech code, tell it to add, and then you're going to put in your V code. Always remember the V code. Medicaid will not pay if you don't have your V code in there. Enter your dates, the procedure code. There are no modifiers with this, but your pointers are your diagnosis codes, and we want them to look at diagnosis 1 and 2. For the amount, again, it's the original amount of the claim. The quantity, this is speech therapy, so it's always 1. And your quantity type is either in minutes or in units. Those are the only two. So, of course, this is a speech therapy session. It's just 1 unit. Line item control number does not need anything in that box. So just tell it to add. When you add, it will open up an editing row that you can edit anything that you put in up here. If you've entered everything right, we have told it that it is a speech claim, that it was 1 unit, and that there's my dates, there's my amount, the place of service is here at the office, and I can just tell it to save because everything is right. On to the next tab is attachments. I have not had to send in an EOB at this point, so I just go ahead and tell it to submit. And it'll tell me whether or not the claim is paid. And there's your page that shows the claim is paid. So the copay now is paid by NC Tracks and Medicaid, and it will show up on your next EOB or your next remit. Okay, Kevin, I'm done.